One problem I've got, and I've mentioned this to you before, and I hope it doesn't sound silly. Almost all of us who will be reporting on this stuff, certainly me talking about this stuff, are going to be quite well insulated from the problems that we're talking about. So it sometimes takes the sledgehammer of statistics to really hit home how big a deal this is. Even front pages you can gloss over. Most people don't even buy a newspaper anymore. But when Simon starts listing there in his news bulletin the millions of people who, 24 million people, are already reducing energy use in their home between March and June. Here's perhaps an even more shocking one. 16 million people have cut back on food and, wait for it, essentials. Wow. 16 million people have cut back on food and essentials. That's nuts, right? But I don't know whether this is just me being a little bit of a worrywart, but everyone who's reporting it, everyone who's talking about it is insulated from it. And I think that creates a problem. I think that creates not a complacency, because the numbers are huge and important, but a sort of a lack of urgency, a lack of emergency. Look, if I was cutting back on food, if the economic situation meant that I was actually eating less or going hungry right now, as many of you may be, I think that the way I talked about it and the way I reported it would feel different to you. I can't convey the same sense of emergency that the 16 million people who've already cut back on food and essentials would be able to convey. And I do think it matters that Nadhim Zahawi, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, is exceedingly wealthy, because I think it matters that I'm not badly off. I think it compromises my ability to do my job as honestly and as clearly as I would like. I think I can overcome that obstacle, largely because I get to talk to you every day. But I don't know that these people can imagine what it's like to be cutting back on food and essentials already and having debates in television studios about tax cuts, which most economic consensus agrees is the worst thing that you can do at a time like this. And I will try and explain what I think is going on. Before I do that, I'm going to read you stupid text that this is going to take some beating. I get a lot of stupid texts from sort of masochistic people who can't help listening to the programme but hate what they see every time I hold up a mirror. And this is absolutely brilliant. Are you ready for this? Why is James criticising Boris and his Chancellor being absent when Bank of England governor, spelt wrong, makes his statement yesterday, but at the same time forgetting to mention that his buddy Martin Lewis is on holiday as well? So private citizen and journalist Martin Lewis has gone on holiday. It's apparently equivalent to the two most powerful politicians in the country being on their holidays at precisely the moment the Bank of England announces that we're staring down the barrel of one of the worst economic crises in living memory. That is what footballification does to you. That is what happens when your Boris Johnson badge is stuck so tightly into your chest that you won't be able to get it off in a month of Sundays. Oh, private citizen journalist has gone on holiday. Ha! Ha ha! You shut up with your criticism of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer for being AWOL on a day like today. For the record, I don't think it matters that much. I think it's optics. I think we need to feel leadership. We need to feel that they care. We need to feel that the people in charge have actually got a handle on this and have concern about it. But in the context of this week or today and yesterday, there's not a lot they could have actually done. It just seems to me to be delinquent and derelict, to be absent. I mean, you may disagree. You may not care whether they're there or not if there's not a great deal they can do about it. But you'd certainly want to see the Chancellor of the Exchequer interviewed, I think, on television or on the radio at a moment like this in our economic history. I would. Not the Prime Minister. I mean, he's a busted flush. You wouldn't want to see him. In fact, if Boris Johnson turned up and promised that he was going to help, you'd probably pack all your belongings into a skip and move to the Isle of Man. I want you to tell me what you think is going on. I want you to tell me what you think is going on, okay? And I'll start. And I start from a position of never really getting it. And that's why I began at the beginning of this waffle by referencing my education, my university education. Because if a graduate of the London School of Economics can sit here on a day like today and think, yeah, this looks bad, but I don't really know how bad, and I don't know why it's happening, then you mustn't feel bad if you're in a similar position. And all of these front pages, I think, somehow create the idea that everybody else understands what's going on, but I don't. So you feel a little bit like, perhaps once again, we find ourselves in the role of the boy in the crowd with the naked emperor. Everyone else is sort of going, oh gosh, that's bad. The big squeeze on the front of the metro, biggest loan rise since 95 as bank predicts recession, and the big squeeze on the front of the newspaper. Immediate hike in interest rates by 0.5% to 1.75, the biggest leap in 27 years in an attempt to slow inflation. It's on the front page. Everyone else must understand what all this means. Guess what? I don't think they do. I think most of us perhaps have a bit of a grip on things, but not much of one. And the guys who write this stuff, it's their job. And they seem to come from a position. I often feel like this on budget day. I've got to be honest with you. It's when I feel most detached from journalism as a profession. On budget day, everyone's queuing up to talk about this and talk about that. But all we ever really notice is the price of beer and whether or not some Humpties put a tax on pasties. We don't really understand, petrol and stuff like that. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm the only person in the country that doesn't understand this stuff. But here's what I want. If inflation is going up, you try to bring it down. Inflation is driven up by people shopping. So what you want to do, as I understand it, is create less shopping, right? Less spending. You create less spending to bring down inflation. Then you do that partly by increasing interest rates, because increasing interest rates means that if your spending is built on borrowing, and most of us got big mortgages or credit cards or whatever it may be, if your spending is built on borrowing, then higher interest rates means you're going to do less spending. And if you do less spending, that will drive down inflation. That's the economic calculation. The thing about economics is that it's not an exact science. Goodness knows, if it was, we'd all be in clover. What we have on the table now is two potential leaders, or certainly the Prime Minister most likely, the candidate most likely to become Prime Minister, essentially promising tax cuts, which increases our ability to spend. If we get a cut in our taxes, we will be tempted to go out and spend more money. That's what the bribe is, right? If I cut your taxes, you'll feel wealthier. Even if your social capital is being crippled, even if by cutting your taxes, I'm going to be crippling public services even more, because there's going to be less money for hospitals, less money for the police, less money for schools, less money for social care. I'm Liz Truss. I deal in unicorns, and I'm promising you a tax cut. So the woman who is most likely to be Prime Minister, I can't remember what Rishi Sunak's policy is at the moment, because it seems to change every 20 minutes. But I'll be across it by 11 o'clock. The person most likely to become Prime Minister is going to cut taxes, while the Governor of the Bank of England is raising interest rates. One of those actions seems to me to be designed to reduce our spending, discourage our spending. And one of those acts seems to me to be designed to increase our spending, which is absolutely bonkers. So whichever angle you're coming at this from, I think we need to begin by examining that paradigm that I've just described, because there will be people who perhaps think that raising interest rates doesn't discourage spending. I don't know. This is the point at which I start to feel stupid. That is the full extent of my understanding. And if my understanding is even close to accurate, then the current political climate that we have created, and again, it's obviously post-Brexit. The political climate is post-Brexit, not even mentioning the economic climate. Post-Brexit, we've created a political climate where they can just tell you that the moon is made of cheese and get cheered to the rafters, like our friend sending me texts about Martin Lewis. The cult is complete, really, and Liz Truss is the heir apparent to the cult leader, and she's going to sustain the cult's support and loyalty by continuing to make unkeepable promises and inflate ludicrous balloons and promise people the earth. while also promising to be really, really horrible to some recently selected minority over there, whether it's people in dinghies or, I don't know, diversity trainers or the really, really important stuff at a time like this. And that is what I don't get. I don't get how these two things can be going on. You increase interest rates to discourage spending, and then you cut taxes to encourage spending. And we seem to be upon the brink of having a bank that does one of those things and a prime minister who does the other. Look, discuss. I'm happy to be stupid. I'm happy for you to pull apart what I've said. That's my understanding of the situation as of 10:18 this morning. I'm kind of hoping it'll be a bit different by 11 o'clock this morning. And I'm not embarrassed to tell you that that's pretty much the extent of my grasp of the issue.